Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
On this, the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion, state leaders are now pushing to enshrine that right in the Maryland state constitution. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Ever since the High Court overturned that right in Dobbs, there has been an effort to place it in state constitutions across the country. This week, Maryland's First Lady, Dawn Moore, and other abortion rights advocates kicked off an effort to put a referendum on the ballot, and Governor Wes Moore and the state's First Lady are set to headline a fundraiser for the effort. In our studio this afternoon is Megna Outten. She's with the Lower Shore Progressive Caucus, also a former member of the Salisbury City Council, and ran for mayor last year. Welcome to the program.
Nice to be back, Don. Thank you.
So, first of all, what do you make of this effort to put this enshrined into the Maryland state constitution? I mean, this is, after all, a blue state.
Yeah, but I will say it says something to make this official. I mean, to enshrine it means to make it the next 28th Amendment for the state of Maryland. And that is a big step to making sure that women have equal say in what they want to do with their body.
So in terms of the sentiment of the state, then, what kind of sense do you get? Do you see this thing as overwhelmingly getting approved? What sense do you get about it?
I say across the state there's an overwhelming amount of support. I think that we have looked across the nation and we've seen our neighboring states and what they have done to restrict women's rights. And here in Maryland, I think we want to make sure that we showcase to women that we have their backs, and we want to make sure that they know that they have the right to do with their body what they want. They get to make that decision ultimately.
This is, although we are sitting in a very conservative area. We are. Indeed, the Eastern Shore. And it didn't seem to have much traction as an issue, say, in the last congressional race between the incumbent Andy Harris and the Democratic candidate Heather Mazur. Why do you think that is? I mean, this area.
I will say there were just so many other policies up in the air during that election that were taking priority. So I really think this just came down to the timing of everything with the last election cycle and what was the priority at that time. Now that things have kind of died down, that has kind of taken precedence in other conversations.
So in terms of this effort, do you see a strong pushback from Republican legislators? I mean, because what's the interesting thing about the state of Maryland is that most of the social issues, and this was true certainly when Larry Hogan was elected governor, most of the social issues like this have been dealt with, that they're done. Do you think that's true now?
I mean, we're seeing a small pushback from some members of the community, some raising their concerns, which they're entirely in their right to do so. Mm-hmm. But nothing on the extreme side. I will say, again, this has already passed. This is just to enshrine that. It's just to take that final step that we think is necessary to make this, a right for all Marylanders. So really, the conversation's all said and done.
So when you see some of the stories that are coming out, what's your own personal reaction to them? I mean, we have a situation in Texas where somebody had to leave in order to get an abortion. Yeah,
it's heartbreaking, truly, to see just, a couple states over. There are women who do not have the same rights as I do with my own body. And, what I can say is I'm thankful that we have local leaders and state leaders and a governor like Wes Moore and our First Lady who understand that need and are willing to advocate for women across the state.
What kind of impact do you think those stories are going to have on public sentiment?
I think it's making people recognize that this is not a straightforward issue. These are complex issues, and a topic like this kind of justifies the reason of why a woman should have the choice to do with her body what she wants. So when she comes to, say we had this issue come out of Texas where a woman was making the tough decision between keeping her baby or choosing to live. That's a really difficult, and to lay it out in a law where it's so black and white, like we are seeing some of our lawmakers do. I think they're just really not understanding the nuances of healthcare.
Because, I mean, one of the things, as a matter of fact, hearkening back to the Congressman Harris's campaign last year, in the debate with Heather Mazur, he talked about, well, now he's in favor of a 15-week ban, that after 15 weeks. What do you make of that shifting? I know before he had also voted, I think, for a personhood ban, at one point. What do you make of that shifting that's going on politically? I mean, you watch politics.
Oh, yeah, I think that's just him recognizing a shift in the tides. I think there are more people in the Republican Party particularly who are willing to have more conversations. They don't see these conversations as such black and white as they used to in the past. And I think that shift has definitely happened with him.
So, in terms of this state, do you think that we're going to be seeing more and more people then coming into the more women that is coming in to seeking that an abortion? I mean, we've seen certainly an increase over the past few years.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the conversations that I'm seeing at the state level is, we have many neighbors. I mean, West Virginia being one, Our Lady First More pointed that out. West Virginia has completely closed the door on abortions for women. So, women are looking to other neighboring states to find that health care. So absolutely, I believe it, which ties into a bigger issue, which is on the Eastern Shore specifically. We're already a healthcare desert in a sense. So we also really need to take a hard look at what additional resources we're going to need down on the shore if we're going to be looked to as this beacon state to help women's reproductive rights.
Are you satisfied that help is here adequately on the Eastern Shore?
I absolutely believe that we need more help here with support to healthcare. I know plenty of women, even just currently, that are struggling to gain most basic healthcare needs just because there's not enough support and resources to go around on the Eastern Shore. And that's been mentioned for years from local leaders, our delegate, Cherie Sample Hughes, and something that I think we need to have a candid conversation about, that when we are pushing, and I'm very supportive of this amendment passing and this referendum going to November, but also recognizing what that means for the resources that we're going to need additionally down on the shore.
So, I mean, do we need more money?
Absolutely. I'm always going to advocate for more money for the Eastern Shore. We absolutely need more money and resources. I think we're a region that's largely left out of the conversation.
Do you feel that way, by the way, about the current budget proposal? Or I don't know how much detail you have yet on what Governor Moore has proposed.
I think he has definitely taken a look into some of the needs of the shore. I will say he has definitely prioritized visiting and talking to a lot of our local leaders, which I think is extremely important to get their take on what's going on.
So one of the things, by the way, that struck me about the abortion issue is that this is something that seems to cross state lines, and since that we saw Kansas, for example, very conservative state, votes Republican on a regular basis, and yet those people who oppose abortion were surprised at the outcome. That is that there were all these people, particularly in the Republican Party, who didn't favor this kind of ban.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where the more you talk to people behind the scenes, the more you realize that there's a lot more understanding there, and a lot more women that have a friend or a family member. I mean, really, this is a topic that touches a lot of families. So behind the scenes, I have come to find a lot of conversations where people are a lot more understanding and willing to, maybe, we're going to see a lot more come out. I'll say it this way. I think we're going to be surprised by the votes that come out of Wicomico in support of this referendum. I really do believe that. You
see that changing than over just in recent years? Because one of the observations I always make is that this is not 1973. That there's this 50-year stretch. Not only that, obviously, women have had that right to an abortion, but the attitudes have also changed over that time period, and that there's no going back.
No, there isn't.
Do you get that sense about the conversations you're having with people who might say here on the Eastern Shore may have, say, opposed abortion? What are those conversations like?
Yeah, I do have the conversations because, again, I think, Don, I come from an entirely Republican family. We have some very interesting Thanksgiving dinner conversations. And, I have heard from, a couple of my family members, if we've already gotten this far, what's the point? And I like to just emphasize to them that it's that extra step in making sure that those rights matter. I mean, again, to fully enshrine this, making sure it's fully protected for the residents of Maryland, that's a huge deal. And I am fully in support of making sure that sees its way through. So you're going to see me advocating for this through November. So
you think that we're going to see a lot more support for this on the Eastern Shore?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, trending, we are definitely seeing a shift demographically. A lot more people have moved into the area that kind of vote on the left side. And I think that is going to play a huge factor. But again, like you've mentioned, we're seeing a number of Republicans come into the realm who are a little bit more supportive of this conversation, with some limitations, mind you, but are absolutely more supportive of the conversation.
Do you see political leaders doing that? Most of them here are Republican, conservative on the conservative side.
They absolutely are. They absolutely are.
Do you see any change there? I don't know how much they've expressed in terms of what they think, but
I've heard a couple conversations, and I won't name names specifically, but I will also say that our leaders aren't always absolutely reflective of larger demographic. So I won't say, our county leaders or our Senate leaders represent the mindset of their entire party. So, for instance, you might see someone that's a little bit more farther on the right and in our leadership. But I will say maybe the majority of the conversations I have in the county region, you find more centered people. It maybe is a better way of putting it. So there's less extremism on both sides. The average person's a lot more centered and understanding of the conversation.
So you expect then this a strong vote for this, and that we will get this. I guess the other question becomes then how that fits into what is obviously an effort at the national level, particularly in Congress. Republicans are looking for some kind of ban. The latest offer, I think, was by Senator Lindsey Graham, a 15-week ban. Mm-hmm. How do you see that fitting into these states carving out their own rights, and yet we could see down the road a national ban of some kind?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why we're prioritizing this right now. As we see what's happening nationwide, we see some of the moves that are being made, and this is what we can do to protect our residents.
Mm-hmm. So you think that there's a clash that if it's in our Constitution, that'll trump?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I am of the mindset that state law holds precedent in that degree. Mm-hmm. We've seen that in a number of instances, maybe not the right correlation, but we saw this with cannabis law in other states. So federally, it's still banned. We see that. Maryland legalized it. So I'm going to say something similar holds up.
What do you make of the courts? A lot of them are conservative, particularly we're looking at the U.S. Supreme Court. Do you think they might change their minds, or they've sort of held this open and they haven't really, outside of overturning Roe?
There's what I hope, and then. I will say this. I've been surprised in the last few years, some of the decisions that have come out of the Supreme Court. But I'm, at the very least, our state leaders are standing by us.
We were speaking with Megna Outten. She is with the Lower Shore Progressive Caucus, also a former member of the Salisbury City Council, and also ran for mayor last year. By the way, I have to ask, you have any electoral ambitions after your foray?
Look, I'll just say this. I'm always going to continue advocating for the people of Salisbury, and that doesn't always come with the title. That just comes with being an active resident. That's all.
What are you doing now? Are you involved in any organizations? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm still on the Kindness Commission, still there, still on the Salisbury Sustainability Team, and on the Wicomico Commission for Women. So still involved out there. But again, I believe that sometimes you don't always need a title to do the good work that needs to be done for your community.
Are you optimistic about the city of Salisbury?
I'm hopeful. I've heard some good conversations, and I'm hoping that we still stay on a good track record that we've had in the last couple of weeks. I think the biggest hurdle coming up for them is budget. That'll be a good telltale for how the next 4 years are going to look. The budget cycle is always the most difficult, and that's really where you see how those relationships are going to pan out. So I already talked to Mayor Taylor. I wished him luck because I went through my first round of budget last cycle, and it's difficult. And you go in there with a lot of preconceived notions of the work that you can do, and then you see those numbers and you realize what you have to work with.
Do you miss it?
Always. It was a lot of fun. It was very dynamic and fast, but I'm still engaged. I still sit on city council meetings from time to time.
Do you offer up your opinions, or?
I'll message them all privately from time to time with my own 2 cents.
Oh, okay. All right. Not on the soapbox, but casually.
Absolutely. We're all in really good relationships there. So,
Megna, appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks, Don.
We've been, again, listening to Megna Outten. She is with the Lower Shore Progressive Caucus and also former member of the Salisbury City Council and ran for mayor last year. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.